for me. And that's what I want to talk about today, because today we have a Spizzy Sprezzatura here. We are at the Imperial Public Bar, that's right near Dundas. It's a fantastic place. We're here the second Thursday of every month. So, now what I want to talk about today is applause, because I have two incredible theater people here with me tonight. And theater is my life. I love the theater. And I am a theater person, and I've been many plays, I've been written many plays, I directed many, and you know what? Why is that? That is the question. Why are we the people of the theater? Why do we get into it? What causes us to go out? What am I doing here? I have a fabulous group of people. There's only 8 of you, but maybe. But I have a fabulous group of people here who are so adoring and love me, and they just clap like crazy for me. Why do I need this? What is in my... I don't know if you saw the musical Chicago, but in Chicago she says something like, she's on the witness stand or whatever, and she says, you know, why do we have to perform? It's because we didn't get enough love from our mothers. I don't know. Is that the reason? I mean, with me, I got too much love from my mother. So maybe that's why. I don't know. Maybe it's just the opposite in my case. But the big question is, why do we do... Do you know the Jerry Seinfeld joke? About... Okay. Thank you. Oh, you're very responsive. So the Jerry Seinfeld joke is that there are 2 kinds of people in the world, okay? You're at a funeral, right? And there's the person in the casket, the dead person, and then there's the person doing the eulogy. Says there are some people who would love to do the eulogy. That's me. And there are other people who would rather be in the casket than do the eulogy. And that's very interesting to me, because I do not understand that. Now, I think, methinks I got the whole impulse, because there's genetics. And I shared so very little with my father, very little shared with him. The only thing I shared with him was that I was much closer to my mother for obvious reasons. But with my father, what we did share was that he was a performer only. He worked for the Travelers Insurance Company. He was a manager of an insurance company, and he was a very nice, kind man, but we had nothing in common, as I say. But he loved getting up in front of the peoples. Like anywhere, if he was here, he would be there, he would stand up, and we would dominate the room. When my sister got married, she got married, and the father of the groom got up and made a speech. And the father of the groom was an old British man. He was very nice and everything, but he got up and I can't do the British accent because I'm already, as you see, heavily afflicted with this accent. But whatever it is, who knows? Mid-European, Mediterranean, I don't know. Under a truck, it comes from somewhere like that. But anyway, so there's this British man, nice British man, making a speech about the groom, and he kind of talking like this, and I can't even, because he had no microphone and no one could hear him. And, you know, people give speeches, you can't hear a word what they say. When he does his speech, on my phone, stands up at the wedding party. After that speech, he goes, "Can everybody hear me?" I swear, that's what my father did. Anyway, so I might have gotten some of that just impulse. I like to think that from him. But I really wonder, now when I was little, I used to sell the greeting cards. I was 8 years old. And for some reason, I decided when I was 8 that I would go make my own greeting cards and go from house to house and sell them. And I was doing this on my own. My parents didn't know about it until the neighbors came to them and said, "Your little boy, he's selling us greeting cards." Not yet, not yet. Sorry. So they got into this. So they got into this whole thing, but it's coming. Wait, it's coming. So they came and they said he's selling, and so my parents were like, "What are you doing selling the greeting cards?" And I think this was the beginning of it, sort of. Was I had to go out there and do something for people, right? And so my parents, of course, because they were like business people, they said, "Well, you're going to get a proper good business." Like 9 years old, I was selling through a little greeting card company to the neighbors. Anyway, yes. So I did it, yeah. Anyway, yeah, Ryan would understand that. So anyway, so what happens is that he's got lots of initiatives. So anyway. What I was saying was there was that, and then to me this is the key moment. This is the moment when I think everything changed for me. Because I was a very anxious child. I was extremely fucked up. I was extremely anxious and depressed and whatever. And I remember going to my mother once in Buffalo. Well, we lived in Buffalo, so perhaps it was because we lived in Buffalo. I was so depressed. But I go to her and I say, "Mother, I don't know, but I don't have, are you ready for, I could have been older than 12 because we moved from Buffalo, thank God, at 12. But I went to her and I said, I don't have any reason to live. Yeah. Yeah. So that may have to do with this theater thing. I'm just putting that in there, putting that in the file away somewhere. No reason to live, theater, right? So anyway, so I got her, I said, no reason to live. And she says, and she was apparently, she told me later, you was very upset when you were like 9 years old and you came and said, you had no reason to live. Oh no, actually I'm dramatizing. I said, strange for me. I said, I have nothing to look forward to, which is, I think, worse, yeah. So she said, okay, well, and I don't know if I had this idea or told her before, but I remember she said, your father will put up a curtain in the basement and you can have a theater. So there she is again, that crazy lady. So I said, you could have a theater in the basement. And I did. I wrote plays when I was like 10 years old for my little friends. The only thing I really remember was a musical version of, in which we sang the Beatles song, you know, and all I remember was a tune about, and when you turned into a frog, oh, and that was the Beatles song, and I wrote all these lyrics for it about a witch and all that stuff. I mean, crazy, right? And I remember also trying to organize all the neighborhood kids and get them to do it, you know what I mean? And I'll just end on this part. My favorite movie was Bing Crosby. When he was going my way, do you remember he organized all the neighborhood boys? They were all juvenile delinquents. Now, I think that was the early gay stuff coming in. Because I think I was interested in those delinquent neighborhood boys. But anyway, he was able to gather them all together, and he was able to, you know, make them sing the songs. And that was like me. I even thought of myself back there. Oh, I've got all my little friends, and they're going to do my show. Oh my God, and I haven't stopped doing that since. So why? I think maybe the depression thing has to do with it, but it's something about one of my questions is, I may just put it into the heads of my actor director, people who are coming up here to talk to me, is what draws them, what makes us do this thing. And there's a part of me that thinks that, of course I think that art and theater is very important, and I will say this, because the arts and the theater, the poetry, it is the only way for us to really learn and know and understand life and the universe. Because you don't get it from no science book. You don't get it from no, not these days anyway, political speech. You don't get it from any of that garbage. You get it from the metaphor, from the art. And I'll say one more thing about art that I promise, and I'm almost done. And that is that basically, I'll tell you what art is, because you came here, you want to know what art is, I'll tell you. It is what the artist does, in my view, and you guys can argue with me, is they present a vision of another life. It's not real life exactly, it's different than the real life, but it is a kind of an imitation of the life, but not exact. And you look at that, and you go, oh, you look at your own real life, which is not fantasy, like art is fantasy, and you go, how does my life compare to that fantasy life? That's all. It's not there to tell you a moral, it's not there to tell you what is right and wrong, it's not there to tell you what is and what isn't. It's just going to present to you this other world, which is not the real world, and you look at it and go, and you will think. Now I'm going to do a little experiment with you people just to end off my little introduction. Excuse me, I don't know why I'm burping so much tonight, but I am, so you just have to put up with it. It's part of my personality. So anyway, I have my favorite pieces of music here to play for you. It's very short. Puccini, you've never seen it. When I say this, even when I speak it in English properly, people think I'm saying Puccini. No, not Puccini. Very little known Italian composer, Puccini, opera composer. So he was as good as Verdi, but no one knows about him, so I identify with him. But he was as good as Verdi. And but he used to love these endings, like the endings to the songs that just make you want to stand up in applause, with lots of cymbals and crashes and endings. And so I have all. So he also writes these beautiful choral things, but I love the ending. So I'm going to play with ending now. When it's over, I know there's only 8 of you, but you don't stand up, because I know if you're like me, you're old, you can barely stand up. I don't know then you are. But anyway, you must applaud loudly and hoot a little bit, because it deserves it, this piece by Puccini. Could you play it for me, please, Mr. Ryan? So going to the end. This is kind of the preparation for the end. Kind of tuny, kind of nice, but building. But they're not quite at the end yet. They're getting closer. And now they're starting. It gets faster. Are you feeling it? And he's not done yet. Are you ready? Clap for him! Clap for all of us! Thank you so much, and that is what they did back in Italy in 1830 or something when they played this. Can you imagine? They stood up and they went, what? And ending with the cymbals and the drums. So now I'm going to welcome my first guest. His name is David Ferry, and I don't know what I don't know what to say about him. First of all, when I looked you, I mean, I know your work, I know you little bits, but it's like I went onto the and all it was your filmography, right? When I went, because I'm looking for, I know he's a stage, I know I've seen him in thousands and thousands of plays. And I know he's a and now he's doing a lot of directing. We're going to talk about that. But I've asked David to come up and perform a little bit before he speak to him. So could you please, I think he's going to read a bit of a play, but he'll tell you. Will you please welcome David Ferry?
You know, I saw a film last night called Lee. And Lee, lovely film. And Man Ray is a character in it.
Oh, this wonderful movie.
And at one point, Man Ray says, like that. At one point, Man Ray says, the art is the only thing that can fight tyranny. That's the one that's great. I'm going to read from a piece that I've written. It's called Cain and Abel. And the protagonist, it's about 15 pages into the play, the protagonist, Jimmy J, has had his heart broken by his girl Maria and his supposed pal Cain, and has left everything behind and is hitchhiking out west through early 1970s Nova Scotia into New Brunswick. He gets a ride at 2 a.m. from a guy driving an old jalopy. "How far are you going?" the driver asked. "Not sure. BC, maybe. As far as I can get from here," I told him. "Girl or the law?" "That doesn't..." "Girl, I guess." "You guess? Don't just know when your heart been torn out?" "That is one thing I do know, sir," I say. Fellow looks me over, takes a breath, holds it, sighs out the air slow, and with one of those Nova Scotian triple yeahs spoken on an inward breath, yeah, hits the accelerator and tells me he's going as far as Rivière-du-Loup, so why don't I reach under the seat there and pull out a couple of moose heads and crack them open, and he hands over a joint and tells me to spark away. "Name's Larry," he said. "But everyone calls me Lar. Been driving trucks for 25 years, since I were 18, on my way to Rivière-du-Loup to pick up my rig. Broke an axle there t'other day. Fortunately, I just dropped my load off, so no harm. Well, not much. What's your name?" Jim Jonah. Jim Jonah? Jeez Louise, you don't want to go through life with whale jokes chasing you trying to swallow you whole. And Jim is just too fucking plain, like a regular donut. Needs some honey glaze on it. Tell you what, I'm going to baptize you a new Jimmy J in the name of the mothers of invention, the sun in the sky, and Casper the ghost. From now on, thou shalt be Jimmy J, and thou shalt leave thy heartbreak behind thee. Get thee gone, heartbreak. You got a license? What? A license, numbnuts, you know, driving. Yeah. Class AR in Ontario, like a Class 3 in Nova Scotia. I can pull those horse trailers and weights up to 10,000, but no air brakes. Shit, that's nothing. You could get your Class 1 easy. You ever think about driving rigs? Not really. More of a farmhand or a tree planter kind of guy. Fuck that, man. There's good money in driving, and you're your own boss, no fucking foreman or rancher bossing you around. And I gotta tell you, there's nothing like a haul down to it across the US of A and crossing the Sierra Nevada and seeing the Pacific as the sun comes up and you take that run down into Sacramento or Oakland. When I first started going that run in the late 60s, I would always spend the night in San Fran, go to the Fillmore, catch some Muzak, the airplane, or Mother's saw Janice there, Jesus wept, and then pick up a trailer of strawberries or something and head back east again, popping black beans or French blues or greenies or jelly bellies or morning shots to keep your engine purring like the engine of your rig in that beautiful low rumble as it hauls ass up the mountains or up the coast and then across 94 and below the Great Divide and dropping off a load to maybe Milwaukee or Green Bay, then picking up a load of toilet paper and Scott towels and Tampax and shooting up through the Sioux and down into Toronto and then back east with a load of meat for Dominion or whatever. You'd be great at it, could start off riding along with me and being like an assistant driver, and sure as shit you could soon be driving for one of the big companies and saving to get your own rig and Bob's your uncle. Pop us another moose in, will you? Here. And with that, Lars pulled a bag of blue bennies out of his jacket and threw them into my lap. That run into St. Louis de Kent was, before he gave me a lift, was to his supplier to pick up the pills. Pills Lars, in turn, supplied to a chain of other drivers. Can't keep up with the hours without Mother's little helper there. Help yourself. Puts a nice buzz on the trip, helps the words flow. Fuck, you are a silent Sam, ain't you? And so we kept on like that, beers and bennies, and I suppose I started to wax not so eloquent myself there, and before you know it, we're best buddies, and he's like, fuck it, I'm taking you all the way into Montreal. We can go to Schwartz's and have a steak with the liver entree on me. I know what it's like to be busted flat in Baton Rouge, my friend. And I wasn't saying no to a ride to Montreal. I had an uncle there working at Molson I could crash with till maybe I got Marie out of my system. So I popped another helper and kept up the gab and the listening in between the Judas Priest metal works or the bands across the Great Divide or the Dead or on Lars's 8-track player as we raced along the 2 and the 85 towards Rivière du Loup. We passed by the Lou as he promised and started taking the smaller highway route along 132. Fewer cops. Towards Quebec City until the fan belt broke and we had to pull over near St. Vallier. And it's about 9:30 in the morning and I walked the 2 miles into the town and was able to get a pair of women's pantyhose at a Pharmaco and came back and fixed his fan belt. And then he drove to the town and took a side road up to the entrance to the Trans-Canada where there was a truck stop he knew and he could get a proper fan belt. And as it was being done, he took me for a coffee and said, "Sorry, Jimmy J. Can't take you into Montreal. I am meant to be back in Moncton by now, and the weapon fucking have my balls for taking so long. I haven't even called the garage in Rivières du Loup to tell them I wasn't going to be there when I said to pick up the truck. Fuck! Here's a couple of beers, a bottle opener, a few bennies to keep you going, and here's my phone number. Here, I'll write it on the back of the smash book here for you. You call me and come and drive the rig with me, and I guarantee you'll love the life, and here's a cone, get a fucking haircut." And he stood up to leave, but then stopped and sat down again and looked hard at me and leaned in and spoke so quietly I had to tilt forward over the cigarette-burned tabletop to listen. "When I was your age, about 21, right? I fell in with a bunch of bikers. This was about 1954. It was where I first got a taste for the speed. This was in Detroit. Gang called the Highwaymen. 1%ers, they called themselves. I had followed Gal there and was working as a driver for a moving company. Used to hang at this place near work called the Wild Ones after the Lee Marvin flick. That's where I met the bikers. Well, one biker in particular. Guy called Arrow. Just Arrow. Used to joke, "Name's Arrow. Get the point?" Yeah. My girlfriend was a waitress in this bar, and that's how I got there in the first place. I was worried for her, surrounded by bikers and the like, but her brother was one of the highwaymen, and her uncle owned the bar, so she was okay. So this guy, Arrow, took a liking to me. He drove trucks himself, but so, anyway, one night, we're shooting the shit at the bar, and he says to me, "You want to go hunting?" "Hunting?" I asked. "Like, what kind of hunting?" "Rats," he says. "Rats?" "Yeah, rats." And he pulls back his leather jacket and shows me 2 pistols, a 38 and a 22. Pulls the 22 out and hands it to me. He tells me to stick it under the back of my jeans and follow him. Before I can say, but he's walking, and so I follow him. We go out the door of the bar, and he gets on his Harley and says, hop on, and we take off. Drive about half an hour into the East End and turn off Chandler Park Drive onto Neff Street, and we slowly pass all these identical small houses, part of the building boom following the war to house returning GIs and their new families. We pull around the corner and park the bike, and Arrow says, follow me. And we walk about 5-6 houses back down Neff, and walk up a driveway and around to a back door, and Arrow looks to me and puts his finger to his lips, and pulls out a Slim Jim and slips it into the door jamb and cops the cheap door lock and slowly opens the door and puts his hand on the back of my neck and pushes me in and follows me into a kitchen. He takes out his 38 and indicates to me to take out the 22. And as you can imagine, I am freaking out because this clearly has nothing to do with rodents. And I am shaken, and he throws up a stop sign to stay and walks along the hall. And now I could hear a TV quiet down there somewhere. And next thing I know, Arrow was walking some guy back with a 38 to his head. And this guy is like white in the face, like drained of color. And then he's on his knees on the kitchen floor and tears are pouring down his face. And he has whispered, please, 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 I got kids. And Arrow smacks the back of this guy's head and takes 2 steps to the kitchen counter and comes back with an oven mitt and hands it to me and grabs my gun hand and puts the oven mitt over the gun and my hand and holds it all to the guy's head and puts his gun up to my head and says, like, so quiet, I have to lean in to hear him like you are leaning in to hear me now. And he says, this guy is the Rat. He was in St. Platoon with me in the war. We were based in Berlin at the end of the war. Berlin was like the Wild West, and a smart soldier could make a very good buck in the black market, which I did. And this cocksucker rats me out to the MPs, and I end up doing 5 years after the war in Fort Leavenworth. It's taken me 3 years to track this fucker down. So now it's time for him to pay the piper. And it's time for you to pay the freight for getting to hang with us 1%ers, Lar. Time to take care of business. Of course, I am like, I can't do this. I'm no killer. I don't even know this guy. Why are you doing this to me? And Arrow cocks his 38 and says, 2's the same as 1 to me, so you gotta figure, do I want to go now, or do I want to keep breathing? And the guy is pissing his pants and please, 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 don't to me. And I'm going, please, 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 to Arrow. And Arrow moves the 38 and pushes it hard into my mouth. You see this gap here? That's the tooth he cracked off with the gun. And now I am all tears of pain and the fear down my face. And the guy and me are all snot out of the nose. And all of a sudden, Arrow leans in fast to my face and goes, boom! And my finger pulls the trigger of the 22, and there is a muffled pop, and the guy plops over and onto the floor with a tiny hole with a tiny black stream coming out of his head, and the smell of the burning oven mitt. And Arrow's arm around my shoulder moved me out the back door and down the driveway and down the street and onto the back of the Harley and roaring off, and all the time, I knew you could do it, kid. And God help me, I start howling this awful, like, joyful scream of, whoa! And I was ecstatic and had this feeling of power, and Arrow shouts back over the growl of the Harley, fucking great feeling, ain't it? And with that, Lars stands up again, taps the comb he gave me and says, watch out for the company you keep, Jimmy J. And get that fucking haircut. There's places on this continent where rednecks shoot hitchhiking hippies out their car windows as they drive on by.
Yes, we will do a little bit of moving and then we'll be ready to go.
Yeah,
Head up here.
come there.
I'll bring it here.
You can just move this up and down. It looks roughly where your mouth is coming over your. Yeah, that's for you. It's all for you. No. Do you want to hold it or would you rather not? And just by you want to see.
Yes.
That's what I was going to do. When you do already.
Oh, it's like this.
Still pretty good. Is it in place?
You'll go bring the beer and take it.
I remember it like right in your mouth. Anyway. Yes, the bishop said to the actor.
As the bishop said,
That was.
hey, that's Bruno back there. Thank you. Bruno.
Oh, thank you. That was the beer.
So, yeah, now it's my microphone. I'll have.
I don't hear anything.
No, can't really see. Yeah, the on the tongue. Test. Testing. You will see. There it is. Thank you.
Testing.
So, I am. This is your play.
Yes.
I'm quite amazed by that. Only because, not because I don't think you would play. I never heard your playwriting before, and I was totally mesmerized by that. Did you write it for yourself to be in it?
No, it's actually because I knew this question was maybe going to come from you. It was a COVID thing. My friend Stuart Hughes and I used to go for these walks during the COVID in a graveyard with our dogs and shoot the shit. And one day I said to him, "Christ, what are you doing to keep yourself, artistically involved or connected?" And he said, "Well, I started playing the blues guitar." And he said, "I'm teaching myself the blues and I'm writing some songs." And I said, "Well, a cool thing to do." And I did that thing. You'll be aware of this. We hear it too often in theater. I said, "You know what you should do?" I said, "You should get somebody to write some monologues to go along with your blues songs and get yourself a one-man show." And he said, "Hey, great idea, man." So that night I went home and I kicked myself in the butt and said, "Come on, don't suggest that somebody does it. Why don't you do it yourself?" So I wrote a monologue and sent it to him the next day, and he liked it, and so I just kept writing, and by the end I had a sort of 90-minute piece that was intended for Stuart to play blues songs and Brienne to act, and then he said to me, "I think you need a real blues musician to do these songs we're creating." I'd written some lyrics, but he said, "Because I'm just not sophisticated enough a songwriter." So I went to a friend of mine, Brooke Blackburn, and asked him, and he said he was interested in the idea. Anyway, I've been trying to raise money, and as an aging artiste,
I know
how fucking hard that is these days. So in the meantime, I do this project in Newfoundland every summer for the writers at Woody Point Festival called Shortwave Short Stories, and I adapted part of this play for that and had a bunch of actors and musicians, and we did it live down there, and it sort of turned out okay. So I've been encouraged, and I'm trying to keep going with it, keep on going.
Well, I give you more encouragement. I'm just turning around so I don't look credit. But it's you've got the characters there. I'm speaking here as this aged writer, and I don't know that much, but I'll just say that it seems to me that you've got characters there like Shakespeare finds these characters like Mercutio and Hamlet who cannot stop talking, and everything they say is so enchanting and so complex and so funny and so bizarre and so crazy and scary that you just listen, right? And so that character is so much like that. Like I could listen to him talking for hours.
Well, the character of Lars in here is actually when I was in theater school in Montreal, and this is 1971, we had a spring break. I was really homesick, and so I hitchhiked to Newfoundland from Montreal to see my family. And along the way, I was in just at the Quebec, New Brunswick border, and I had my thumb out like till 2 a.m. And at one point, this guy drives by in a car and says, "I'll be coming out in an hour. If you're still fucking here, I might give you a ride. Get your fucking haircut." And he did pick me up, and was a speed dealer, and he did tell stories, not quite as elaborate as those, but he told me these amazing stories and didn't want me to just write him, and said, "Come and become a truck driver. Fuck everything."
Oh, wow, that's good. So it comes from a real thing. Now, I want to get back and talk a little bit about you. So that means you went to the National Theatre School, correct? Is that right, in Montreal?
Actually, I was there, but they kicked me out, so they sent me to the National Theatre School of Mongolia, where I finished.
I think that's a badge of honor to be kicked out of the National Theatre School. Now, tell me, and then now I knew you as actor, but now you are director. So when does that change happen? Or did it happen suddenly, gradually?
It was actually... I went through one of those arrogant young actors phases where I thought there's no fucking decent directors.
They are so true, but it's a true thing.
I don't actually think it is true, but I was just having difficulty with a lot of the directors that I was working with, and I thought I could direct better than this. So I decided I wanted to do that. And I got a Canada Council grant to study with a couple of directors, an opera director, a fabulous choreographer. And at one point, I decided to put on a play in Vancouver, and there was a play that I had fallen in love with in Toronto called Dusa Fish, Stas and Vi.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And so I did a little production as a director with Brenda Robbins and Fran Gebhardt and Kyra Harper and Pam Rogers, who became an administrator later, and sort of got the bug. And when I came back to Toronto, I was trying to direct, and I went to a friend of mine who was running a theater school, and I said, look, I can't afford to go out of town and do small theaters, just I can't make enough dough. Could you hire me to direct at a theater school? And I asked him to give me a big play so that I could learn how bodies work. It was at Humber, it was Mark that hired me. And so that's how I sort of got into it.
And you like the directing?
Very much so. It's completely different from the acting, and one of the things I knew was from myself having worked with great actors who became directors, is that one is not allowed to say, just do it this way. You know, so.
Oh, absolutely. You know from the other side.
Yeah, from the other side.
Absolutely. And I have acted myself, and I know that the acting, that really helps you in that respect, absolutely. But I also know that for me, directors, so many of them don't do anything. Like there was a famous director, no names mentioned, who was very successful, and that I remember hearing about, and people would tell me, oh, he just gets really good actors, and then he puts them in the play, and it's a good play, and then he just lets them, they do their thing, and amazingly, sometimes it works, unfortunately, but that means he doesn't actually have to do any directing, you know what I mean? But
Bill Glasgow was like that.
Oh my Jesus God, you gave it away. So that was what I didn't say that. God bless his soul. God bless his soul.
He used to wear this little Buddha around his neck, and he used to walk down onto the stage and look. He was a very wise-looking cat. He was.
He looked like he should have wear him. He looked like a god.
He'd rub his Buddha, and he'd say, "I think you should move 2 feet down my."
Oh my God! You know that I was the assistant stage manager for Leaving Home when he directed that, and that was my first job in the theater. And it was an actor who I don't remember, Maureen O'Sullivan, I think was the woman.
Fitzgerald.
And then there was this old, maybe you know his name, but he was an old guy from down east, and he played perfectly that role. But he was drunk.
Sean Sullivan.
Yeah, he was drunk every night. And so they would have to, I and other people would have to push him out. And his first thing was to come on and sing, "I's the bills the boat, and I's the sails," that's his entrance. And he would come out and would sing this song. And then and then one night he was in this huge fight. Sorry, I'll stop monopolizing. There's this huge fight with Maureen O'Sullivan or whatever her name was. And it was unbelievable. Like, I'm not fucking with them. That's it. This is the end. No one. Bill had to come in. I remember this was my introduction to the theater. Was watching Bill come in and deal with this. But yes, it was Bill Glasgow. God bless his soul. But he did start Tarragon. Wonderful theater. Wonderful thing that happens there.
Maureen was married to a very, very, very good-looking gay man.
Oh, really?
Who was in Dynasty. Anybody remember who I know? Canadian guy.
Blonde?
No, dark hair.
No, dark.
Very good-looking. Very.
Well, yes, I know lots of actresses who are married to good-looking gay guys. It seems to be a bit of a thing that happens sometimes. Not quite sure how that happens. Now, I wanted to say to you that one of the things that one of the reasons I wanted to have you up here, I didn't say, but you did respond to a blog that I had put out there, and it struck me. I want to talk to everybody today about what is going on with the theater and what is happening, and is it going away? I mean, it's my only life I live for. The applause is you. I feel like what's happening and what's happening in Toronto, because the people aren't going to the theater, or not as much as they were, and some theaters are closing. But what is going on? That is my big question right now. Do you have an idea how we got to this state where, anyway.
Well, the perfect storm, I guess, of sorts. You know, some of the social movements of the last going on a decade now that sort of came together, and then I guess COVID was the crowning glory of that, which kept people out of the theaters.
Absolutely.
And then people realized that, you know, they could get all the entertainment they want through the box in their house. So they're not going to movies much anymore either.
No, that's very true, because they have to leave the house.
Lots of other things.
To do those movies.
So, and then the social movements, it seems to me, to a certain extent, started to impose themselves on the theaters that were existing out there by saying, you know, you have to tell the right stories.
Right.
And for me, forgive me if you disagree with this, I just really believe that theater's job is to make the audience ask themselves questions, and it is not to tell them what they should think. And so I've started seeing a lot of theater that tends to the latter and not enough of the former, where an audience is assumed to have the intelligence to make up their own mind about what's right, what's wrong. And so there's a lot of theater going on that I see where I just, there's no guessing game here.
Well, you know what my favorite, I absolutely agree with you. And the only thing that I like about this theater is when I go, not the only, one of the things, is when I see a character and I don't know what I think about that character. I listen to them talk and I hear their point of view, and sometimes I go, I don't think I like this person. Then I go, oh, but they're human, or they're nice, or they're funny, or you know what I mean? And I learned as a writer that this is what Shakespeare does, and this is what Shaw tries to do, not quite as well as Shakespeare, but he tries, which is to give the characters, in Shakespeare, one of the problems is that the characters are gray the way people are, right? Like, I mean, and I don't personally think that people, we meet or hope we never meet some psychotic people, but most people are not like that. Most people are actually very boring at times, or very objectionable, and then absolutely fantastic at other times, right? And that's what we find when we live our lives, don't you think?
Well, yeah, I think, the most exciting theater I often see is theater where you start out thinking a character is absolutely horrendous, and by the end of the play you feel sorry for them. Absolutely. And I just love that, what that does to me as a human being. It gets inside of me. I remember seeing a film called Le Comme Lucien years ago, and the first shot of the film is this young man in France just before the war looking out this beautiful bucolic garden, a hospital, and there's beautiful songbirds singing, and he takes out a slingshot and kills this bird, and he goes on to become a Nazi sympathizer and a thug. By the end of the film, I felt sorry for him. And I remember thinking, that's the kind of stories I want to tell, which makes you question your own process of belief and think.
Well, I always say it's the difference. There are two kinds of theater. There's the theater, and one of them is called Come From Away. Come From Away. That's one kind of theater. And what that theater does is that you go there because you go, I'm feeling depressed today. I wish I felt better about myself. Oh, I go to see Come From Away, and all the white peoples are nice peoples in Newfoundland because they help the people of color and the gays who are a problem to deal with sometimes. But they like them and they're nice to them. And I'm a good person like that. All us white people are good peoples. And the play's all about that, right? So if you go to be confirmed that you are a good person, but then you might go to the theater, and that's the issue, is to go there and go, am I a good person? Or should I think about the way I act? Should I was I mean to my partner last night or whatever? Did I kick that dog? Whatever. You did. That was not a good. Now tell me about this is your new plays the plays that you're directing at Coal Mines that I'm so excited, because I'm so excited by Coal Mine and Crows. They're doing this stuff now. It's happening. And is it called Job or Job? Or both?
Job.
Okay.
Well, but you could call it Job if you want. I mean, obviously there's a double meaning to the term, but yeah, it is called Job. And it's a play I read about in the States when it had just opened in Soho at a tiny 89-seat theater, and I read a great article in an American magazine about it that was talking about something Virginia Woolf had said in applying it to this play. And I went, geez, that sounds interesting. So I looked up the author's name and found his website, and I couldn't find a copy of the play for sale anywhere, not at Amazon, nowhere. So I reached out to the writer and I said, I love the sound of your play, but I can't read it because I can't buy it. And he said, oh, I'll have my agent send you a copy. Glad that you're interested. So I got a copy of the script, read the script, loved it, thought this would be great at Coal Mine. Wrote back to contacted his agent and said, listen, are the rights available? She said, no, we're not. We're going to be moving to off-Broadway, so we're not making them available. But if anybody from Canada asks later on, I'll keep you in line. So I sent it to Ted and Diana, and my original idea was for Diana and myself to act in it and Ted to direct it. And long story short, the writer really wanted a somewhat younger, very much younger actress playing the role, because he wrote it for a Gen Y woman, somebody 25 to 28-ish, because that's what he is. And the woman who played it brilliantly in New York is 38, fantastic actress. And he says that. He says, but I would love to see a production where it's, and the man's slightly younger than my 73 years. So the Ted said, will you direct it? And I went, sure, I love the play. And he got the rights, and we got, Diego Anamoris playing the lead. And anyway,
it's about, sorry to interrupt you, but it's about sort of digitalness or something.
It is.
To some degree.
It's a young woman who works, shall we say, for someone like Google on their search engine. And her job, along with a couple other people, is to search the internet for horrendous shit and stop it from popping up on their search engine. And of course, it drives her slightly balmy. And one day at work, she ends up standing on her desk screaming, and somebody films it, and it goes viral. And she's put on leave, medical leave, and she says some months later that she wants to go back to work, and the company doesn't want her back, but they can't say no. So they hire this independent therapist to have meetings with her and determine whether she can go back to work. That's the basic story.
No, that's a great story. And for me personally, I talk about it all the time, but I'm not exactly a Philistine. I understand why we need toasters and why we need computers, but I still think the digital world, especially social media, is just destroying our fucking lives. And people do not. We are here in a room together. And that is so important. We're looking each other.
Live to you on YouTube.
Absolutely, and we are seeing each other. But we are in the room, and if you came to spin, you could be a tune. I'm afraid I have to wrap it up.
Yep.
But I just want to say thank you so much, David, for that reading and for talking with you. It means so much. And please, applaud for Mr. David Ferry. We'll be back.